Lisa Weiss reveals something in an incredible exclusive that alters our preconceived notions about Doug Weiss and Joni Lamb. Dark secrets that have the potential to topple their entire strong empire are exposed as the truth comes to light. You will be astounded and start to doubt everything after hearing what Lisa has to say. The impending revelation of the truth stunned everyone. This is a significant story that has the power to alter everything. Be careful. While her ex-husband Doug Weiss built his career using his reputation as a marriage specialist, Lisa Weiss had been silent for years. Doug represented healthy partnerships for a long time. He imparted knowledge about commitment, love, and the value of marriage. He gained notoriety by assisting others in repairing their marriages and frequently discussing the value of loyalty and dependability. Doug informed everyone about Lisa behind closed doors, but that was a far cry from her actual life. She has experienced the silent suffering of a steadily failing marriage. She felt increasingly inconspicuous as Doug's life became consumed with his profession. It was obvious that he wasn't as involved in their relationship as she was, even though she put in a lot of work for him and remained by his side for years. When Lisa eventually found the courage to speak, everyone was taken aback by what she said. She exposed the layers of deception that had concealed her suffering for so long by telling him the truth about their marriage. She depicted a failing marriage as well as a more significant betrayal. According to Lisa, Doug started to prioritize his public persona over his role as a spouse. As a result, they developed an emotional distance that widened with time. She had to deal with more than just arguments and fights. She was ignored and abandoned for a long time. When Lisa revealed that Doug had remarried to Joni Lamb just a few months after their divorce, it was a huge surprise. After years of meeting her through professional Christian groups, Doug married Joni. Lisa was amazed at how quickly everything was moving. How could someone who frequently stressed the need of patience and commitment in a marriage get married to someone else so soon? In addition to discussing the agony of losing her spouse, Lisa exposed a network of deception and inquired as to whether Doug and Joni had been emotionally involved prior to their formal divorce. When they first started dating, it was difficult to tell, and Lisa wasn't scared to pose difficult questions. What had been happening in the background? Before the public divorce, had they been dating for some time? Doug had put a lot of effort into proving that his marriage was wonderful, but her revelation dispelled his delusion. People believed they were a perfect match and had everything worked out, but Lisa's statements revealed a sad reality that nobody had anticipated. She shared more than just her feelings of hurt. She also shared a tale of deceit, covert connections, and years of mental anguish. It not only caused people to reevaluate their assumptions about Doug and Joni, but it also caused them to reconsider the veracity of Doug's public persona. When Lisa spoke up, she at last found her voice. She had been surrounded for years by a man who worked at mending other people's relationships while allowing his own to fail. And I told her, "No, Joni, something very bad has happened, and there's been an essay in all of this." "Oh no," she answered, defending Pete. "He's destroying us. He's destroying me," she told me. "He's hurt Pete so much. The Pete that Rebecca and Joni wrote a huge letter about. That Pete, the Pete that Rebecca and Joni won't let into their home, that Pete is a good guy," she continued. "I was shocked by what Joni told me, that Susie was a pathological liar, and that she had made these accusations against a very nice man, the chiropractor who has since died but has a record and attacked her. I pleaded with her. Please make peace with Jonathan for yourself. That would be the best thing that could happen." I saw that side of her in the video where she claimed Jonathan was launching a smear campaign, and I thought, what are you talking about? I saw Jonathan talking to Doug and Lisa Weiss, not spreading misinformation. The marriage between Doug and Lisa Weiss used to seem like the ideal Christian partnership. They had raised kids, endured many of life's ups and downs, and been together for almost 30 years. She had great faith in Doug, who was also her greatest friend and companion. Together, they had experienced all the highs and lows of life, including job changes, relocations, and now raising a child. That's how it appeared. It seems that they would make a wonderful relationship. As a marriage counselor who has helped tens of thousands of people mend their relationships, Doug was a role model for many. He was regarded as an authority who knew everything. Lisa, who was at his side constantly and gave the impression of being the devoted and caring wife, helped him create that image. They were a fantastic team, at least that's what everyone believed. Behind closed doors, however, things weren't as nice as they appeared. It was a long time coming. The conflict or debate didn't start out that way. Absolutely not. Later on, Lisa would realize that it was the gradual deterioration of their relationship. Doug's work eventually gained popularity, and he was recognized as a marital specialist. This caused him to shift his attention. Little by little, Lisa was shoved aside. Over the years, even though Doug had always enjoyed his work, it became apparent that it was consuming an increasing amount of his time. The late nights, traveling for speaking engagements, and the expanding demands of his ministry started to strain their marriage. At first, Lisa tried to convince herself that it was only a phase. It would get better, she told herself. She believed that she and Doug might have a nice relationship. She felt, however, that no one was paying attention to her as the years passed. Once so emotionally present, Doug was now far away. He was constantly on the go and occupied. When he was there, he wasn't quite at home. Work, his public persona, and the demands of his position occupied his thoughts. However, Lisa felt even more cut off from the man she had known so well when she was left at home. It wasn't a one major argument. Rather, it was the accumulation of small things over time, such as omitted conversations, gestures, and lack of compassion. The fact that nobody knew was the worst part. Their marriage was failing, but no one noticed. On the outside, they still appeared to be the ideal couple, but their relationship was failing. Although Lisa felt as though Doug was abandoning her, she was unsure of how to get him back. She made an effort to contact him and smooth things out, but he was constantly too preoccupied with his job. They were more emotionally distant, and despite Lisa's best efforts to connect with Doug, she felt as though he was renouncing her. She was starting to lose contact with the man she had spent her entire life with, and who had always supported her. Physical absence was a contributing factor, but it wasn't the only one. For mental reasons, it hurt more. She missed the man she had dated, the one who was sympathetic to her hopes and anxieties. Alone with her thoughts, she was attempting to determine what had gone wrong. When Lisa was by herself, she would reflect about the early years of her marriage. When Doug was there for her no matter what, they discussed their future plans, and they created a life together. She recalled their conversations about growing old together, and their aspirations to have a future together. However, those dreams now appeared so far. Over time, Lisa started to wonder if she was still the woman Doug loved. She didn't know the man he had become, and she didn't know the woman she had become. She had lost herself after years of prioritizing Doug and his work. She neglected to look after her emotions and herself because she was so busy assisting him. However, the distance wasn't the only factor in the breakdown. Doug had changed, and it was becoming obvious little by little. She married a man who had changed over time. He had shifted his focus, and his objectives no longer aligned with hers. They no longer had the same aspirations for the future. Instead, they now had distinct ones. Doug forgot about the woman who had supported him through both good and bad times as he tried to enhance his public persona. Despite the fact that Lisa had always supported and assisted Doug, He didn't appear to see or respect her as much as he formerly did. Lisa put a lot of effort into trying to hang on and make things work, but it became increasingly difficult. She made an effort to maintain the connection and reconnect with Doug, but he was never interested because he was too preoccupied with his job. And as their emotional distance increased, Lisa began to feel increasingly alone. She was more than just his wife. She was his shadow, someone who supported him in the background but was rarely mentioned or seen. Only a few months after their divorce, Doug's second marriage to Joni Lamb was the tipping point. Lisa was taken aback by how quickly everything had occurred. One moment, she was still coping with the breakup of her 30-year marriage, and the next, Doug was having an affair. It really got to me. Additionally, Doug had taught a lot about the value of marriage. How did he get over it so fast? The man Lisa had spent her entire life with had gone on with someone else, and she had to live with it. She felt betrayed by how quickly everything happened. In addition to the fact that she remarried, it was painful that Doug had moved on without providing their marriage with the time and attention it required to recover. He seemed to disregard Lisa and discard what they had laboriously created together. Because she had lost the person she had been for so long, she was in a lot of agony. The woman who had accompanied Doug had been forgotten in the process. She had supported Doug for many years and assisted him in growing his company. She had nothing left now that it had all gone wrong. The most difficult thing of all was feeling as though the life they had created together was no longer important. Now that she was looking back, Lisa could see the flaws in their marriage more clearly. Their marriage ended as a result of several minor incidents that gradually weakened the connection they once shared, rather than a single major incident. It had been the gradual drift, the mental detachment, the neglect that had accumulated over time. When Doug married someone else, his marriage to Joni had been over for far longer than any of them had anticipated. In addition to being upset over Doug's passing, Lisa was also unhappy about all of their shared dreams. She felt that all of the effort she had put into their marriage had been in vain. Although her divorce wasn't easy for anyone, Lisa felt deceived by it. She had spent years building a life with Doug, but now she had to rebuild it. Not only did their divorce mean the end of their romance, but it also meant the loss of their shared future and a goal. The most difficult thing to handle was that Lisa sat stunned, gazing at the news reports. Just a few months after their divorce, Doug remarried Joni Lamb. It felt like a slap across the face and hurt like hell. She was unaware of its imminence. The speed with which Doug moved on astounded her. For over 30 years, she had supported him through life's highs and lows. She had been his companion in every manner. Together, they brought up their kids and weathered the storms of life. It had been their dream to grow old together. Nevertheless, Doug swiftly went on to someone else before flipping the page, leaving her behind. By that point, Lisa felt deceived. After they were divorced, Doug married Joni in what felt like the blink of an eye. The years they'd spent together, the times and memories they'd shared, meant nothing to Lisa anymore. Joni had replaced the man she had spent so much time loving and building a life with. She had previously worked professionally alongside Joni in the same Christian organizations. Lisa saw it as a slight to their marriage and all of their joint accomplishments. Lisa was aware that their marriage was failing. She sensed their emotional distance from one another for years. However, the grief of their breakup was exacerbated by their hasty second marriage. As though their 30 years together had been a chapter in a book that was now finished, the man she had been with had gone on. Perhaps it wasn't that Doug remarried, but rather how fast he did it. How effortlessly he went on, leaving Lisa to rebuild her shattered world. The most difficult aspect was that Doug's new marriage felt like a public acknowledgement of their failure rather than merely a setback to their sentiments. Doug had spent his entire life preaching about the sanctity of marriage, love, and fidelity. He had earned a living by offering advice to couples on how to resolve conflicts and maintain their union. Nevertheless, he was abandoning Lisa so quickly and thoughtlessly. Lisa couldn't help but marvel how Doug, who made a livelihood by assisting people in getting married, could so readily discard everything they had fought so hard to achieve. There were moments when Lisa couldn't understand Doug's treatment of her. They had discussed many topics throughout the years. They had created a future, a mission, and a family together. However, it appeared like everything vanished in a matter of months. In his own life, none of the qualities Doug had discussed, patience, dedication, and loyalty, seemed to be applicable. She thought that a stranger who could turn the page so fast had taken the place of the man she had loved for a long time. The fact that Doug's new marriage was public made it even more difficult. The public breakdown of Doug and Joni's romance was witnessed by the entire globe. For many years, Lisa supported Doug and helped him develop his business and public persona. She now had to witness how effortlessly he went on, like if she had never existed. The situation was exacerbated by the news of Doug's recent marriage. People who had no idea what Lisa was going through seemed to be examining and dissecting every aspect of her life. She felt as though she was unable to escape the stories, the uncertainties, and the questions. Lisa felt like she was being replaced, which was hurt in addition to the speed at which her husband remarried. The fact that Doug and Joni were dating felt more than simply like an insult. Joni was not like the others. She was someone they had known for a while. She knew many of the same people as Doug, with whom she worked. He was now her husband. Lisa reasoned that Doug must have found someone more compatible with his own life, someone who was easier to be with. She was abandoned, alone, and devastated by the way things had gone. It was even more distressing to watch Doug move on so quickly because Lisa had spent years attempting to keep their marriage together. She put a lot of effort into trying to salvage the relationship, reconnect with Doug, and maintain the life they had created together, but ultimately she felt that her efforts had been in vain. Doug moved on without providing them an explanation or attempting to assist them in resolving their issues, since he believed their marriage was over. He gave the impression that he made the decision for them both, leaving Lisa to cope with her heartbreak alone. Lisa suffered greatly and began to doubt her own value as a result of Doug's new marriage. For years, his wife supported him, helped him grow his company, and put a lot of effort into keeping the family together. However, none of that seemed to matter now. In addition to losing her spouse, Lisa was also losing herself. She had been Doug's wife for so long. She was alone now, and she had to accept that. A woman who was now only a memory had completely upended Doug's life, and Lisa couldn't help but feel forgotten. There were moments when Lisa pondered everything. Was she merely part of the fiction Doug was making up for himself, or had he ever truly loved her? How could they simply end their marriage after years of discussing faithfulness and loyalty? Lisa was struggling to understand all of the questions that kept coming up. She couldn't get over how devastated she felt, and she had to confront the harsh reality that Doug had moved on without looking back. Having lost a dream and a marriage, Lisa was already going through a difficult period. For a long time, she believed in the future they had planned. She had believed in Doug, their love, and the life they had created together. A new life with Joni appeared to have overshadowed all of that. Lisa was unable to understand what had gone wrong, what she had missed, or why Doug hadn't put in the same kind of effort to keep their marriage intact as she had. But Lisa's sense of betrayal wasn't the only hurt created by Doug's new marriage. It also mattered what it meant for their children and their friends. For Doug, steadiness and dedication had always been the best qualities. He assisted other spouses in preserving their unions. But in the blink of an eye, that man had ruined his own marriage. How could his children reconcile the man they knew with the man who had moved on to someone else so fast? For what reason might Doug's longtime admirers comprehend him? Not simply Lisa was harmed by Doug's second marriage. They did not spare anyone who had been in their life. Doug's hasty second marriage was the toughest for Lisa since she felt abandoned. Doug's hasty departure gave the impression that their years together had been in vain, and that their marriage had never mattered. She appeared to have vanished from his life overnight, and Joni replaced her. Nothing hurt more than that. Her husband was not the only thing she lost. She lost her personality, her future, and her life. After a marriage that had meant the world to Lisa ended, she had to rebuild herself. Lisa had to cope with the conflicting emotions that accompanied witnessing her former life unfold in public as the news of Doug and Joni's new marriage continued to surface. Even though it was terrible, she had to accept that she was no longer a part of the life they had shared and that Doug had gone on. For a long time, Lisa would remember how difficult it was for her when Doug remarried so soon after. But with time, she learnt to heal. She discovered how to rebuild her life, find serenity within the suffering, and continue on despite the feeling that everything had been torn apart.